Are we excited?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. Thank you so much for carving out the time to be here today. My name is Wendy Nicholson, and I am the Executive Director of Faculty and Staff with OPE. And I am super excited about K-State's very first Employee Nutrition Cooking Demonstration class. And I have this wonderful, wonderful person next to me, Sherilyn Clayton Jackson, and she is with Extensions, and she is going to present to you. She's our facilitator. I hate to disappoint you. I know you thought it was me. But not this time, not this time. But without further ado, I'll just hand it over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you today. I've been with Extension for a little over 42 years. For 23 of those, I believe, I was in county offices in Chautauqua County in Southeast Kansas, and then for about 18 years in the Ryland County Extension office. And so now I'm in a specialist position on campus. I'm over at Umberger Hall. And I work with the agents who get to do this fun stuff pretty routinely. And so it worked out. Wendy and I have been talking. I also coordinated the Walk Kansas program. And so we were talking and I said, there are different things that we have, ready to go. And I'd be willing to teach that for you if that's something you're interested in. So we have a class today that's called Med Instead of Meds. And we're going to look at the Mediterranean eating style, not necessarily all Mediterranean flavors, but the Mediterranean eating style, what that includes, and then also how you can incorporate that in your lifestyle. And so we're going to be doing some tasting each time. We'll be meeting for 6 sessions, once a month for 6 months. And you'll learn more about what the topics are as we talk about this Med way of eating. And I'll be using some of the recipes from the website Med Instead of Meds, but also from a large collection of recipes that I've tested over the years for the Walk Kansas program and other extension programming, and it's pretty good options. So we're going to be doing tasting at least 3 or 4 things each time that we meet, and maybe get to do a little hands-on food prep. So if you're ready to get involved when we do some stir fry or something, we'll have some volunteers. So think about that and be ready to go when that time comes. Med Instead of Meds is developed by North Carolina State University. And so in Extension, we share a lot of things across state lines. And so Kansas has a contract with them to be able to use this curriculum. And it's one that we're doing in partnership with Wendy this time. So they're covering the cost of all the food and such. So really appreciate that. And that Wendy's able to do that. So I'd like to know a little bit from you. What are your expectations of our time together over the next 6 months? What are things that you'd like to learn specifically that if it's not already planned, I can maybe incorporate into the sessions? Any ideas, thoughts?
Sherilyn, when I go grocery shopping, I like to buy ingredients that I can use for multiple meals. And so I don't know if that's something that is going to be part of the conversation, but I think just the kind of climate we're in, that would be kind of helpful.
Yes, so kind of maximizing your dollar as you're shopping.
Exactly.
Okay. Good deal. Anybody else?
Similar to that, I really want to minimize food waste as much as possible.
Okay. Great. Yes, we'll be weaving that in into the presentations and into the tasting, and also some food safety kinds of tips how many of you use a food thermometer when you cook? Oh, good. This is my dear friend Antonina. She's in the Ag Econ department. She's from Ukraine. Came here 3.5 years ago, lived with me for about 2.5 years, she and her family. And I introduced her to a food thermometer. And it's kind of fun because she's always using it now. One of the things my late husband liked to cook. And so I introduced him to the food thermometer, and I created kind of I don't know, a food Nazi or something, because he'd get on, watch cooking shows, and then when they wouldn't use the food thermometer and they do something wrong, he'd email them and say, you didn't do this right, this is not a good food safety practice. It's kind of fun. Food thermometers are wonderful. And can save you not just, it's just safety, but also to ensure that you're getting good quality food, cooking things to the right temperature. What else?
New recipes,
New recipes,
healthier eating.
healthier eating. Yes.
I think as professionals, we all plan our lunches ahead of time, so maybe gearing it towards meal prep for those sorts of things.
Yeah, so planning ahead,
Mhm.
some meal prep, okay?
Yes, maybe just like portion control and figuring out like, I'm cooking for one day now too. And so it's like figuring out like what I can cook that I don't. Days.
Right. That's not any fun. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this one thing, we always talk about this, all this information is available here and there. What is something we can implement? We talk this here and there, right? And when we go back, we do the same thing. And then we look at in the news, whatever this thing, then how can we kind of implement, practical, that kind of sense of this thing kind of missing.
Like a practical with your food prep.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
everything, how we can, You go to this lecture, that lecture, you go like, okay, well, yeah. This, just, maybe we need. I don't know, this is kind of something everybody's specified, so. This lecture here and there is something that everywhere,
Yes, yes,
but we didn't get it, we didn't get it in the sense that we don't implement.
yes. You hear these things, but you're not putting them into practice.
Yeah.
But I think that's a lot of it, I like to describe myself as a foodie, and I'm gonna up my cooking day besides using a thermometer, that I have and, just the quick and easy hacks that, you don't always think about, it's like, wow, that's great, I can do that, I could preserve this, that. Just up my game.
Yeah, we'll try and insert some of those little tips. Of things, I'm just thinking of like, if you need lemon juice for a recipe, and I like fresh lemon juice, but what do you do when you have part of the lemon left? Or you need just the zest, not the juice. And so I have these handy dandy, I'll bring them next time, but they're a little silicone bottom with little 1 tablespoon sections below. And you just put like the lemon juice in there, or lime juice, or tomato paste. How many times do you need just a little bit of tomato paste when you open a can, and what do you do with the rest of it? So you put it in there, freeze it, pop it out, put it in a baggie, and then label if you got it in your freezer. So the next time you need just a tablespoon, it's ready to go. That's been a real handy thing that just popped in my mind. So we'll kind of popcorn off of each other here and things that you like to do and share. I don't have all the answers. I'm hoping to learn something from you guys too. Anything else out in the Zoom world? Okay, well, let's learn a little bit more about this thing called med instead of meds. Glad we have a tech person.
Did you put the eggs away, Loretta? Okay.
They have this shirt.
It's that,
It died.
so showing me.
Okay, then I'm just gonna. Working? All right, woo-hoo. And it's showing for the people out in Zoom? Great. Showing screen, okay. All right, so what we know about our genes is that they contribute about 70 to 80% of our overall health. That we get that from our parents, what we inherit. That those are things we have no control over. But that other, excuse me, I have that backwards. We get 20 to 30% from our genes. And so that other 70 to 80% are things we can control. That's our lifestyle, our environment, those kind of things. So we often think about, if it's in your genes, that's just a small part of our overall health. So what I really would like for you to think about is what kinds of changes can you make? What can you incorporate that will make sense for you that you can actually do? And something, if it's going to be too hard, right, you're not going to do it. It's just like with exercise. If it's an activity you don't like to do, you're not going to do it. So just find something that you like. And so hopefully to this class, you'll get to taste some new foods, new flavors, new seasonings, maybe new types of food, things that you don't normally incorporate right now. And you think, oh, I like that. I can do that. So that's my hope, is that we can introduce you to some new things too. But I think it's important for you to know and to empower you to know that you can make those changes in your environment and in your lifestyle that can help improve your health. A lot of times, people have excuses for not eating healthier, right? We all have them. And so it can be that it's too hard. And kind of alluded to, there's lots of messages coming at you from all different places. It can be hard, it can be confusing. And then you're also concerned that maybe healthy eating is too expensive. So those are things that come up as sort of a top three, but are there other reasons that you can think of why it's difficult to eat healthy?
Too many choices, too big portions, enormous in America.
Yes, big portions.
It takes so much time.
Time is a big factor.
Or you don't have the equipment, or you don't think you have the equipment. to
Right.
make Whatever it is.
Yeah, so there are a number of reasons why barriers that get in our way. So some common reasons why people don't eat healthy are some things that they think is it's not going to taste good. If it's healthy, it's not going to taste good, right? Not necessarily. I was really having a hard time driving over here. I kept smelling basil and I was just smelling so good in my car and thinking, oh gosh, I can't wait to eat some of this later. But I think it's also what you sort of train your mind to think what's healthy or what tastes good, and to enjoy. If you just try something more than once, and maybe the first time you don't like it, but prepare it a little different way, it tastes pretty good. So it's not going to taste good. I don't really have the time, or you don't have the skills. That's another barrier that people have. They find that it's expensive to cook and then have something not turn out, and so that's another issue. So I'm hoping that we can do some tasting. This is going to taste good. You have some skills. You can implement some of these things. But eating healthy doesn't have to be that hard. And think about making it more simple. So eating healthy can look like this. It can also look like this. Or this. Whoops, skipped one. How about this? Or this one is really pretty exciting for me because I love seafood. But this is kind of where we're going with the Mediterranean eating style. Lots and lots and lots of color, and that makes food a lot more appealing. And so we've tried to really look at ways to put color on our plate. Putting color on your plate gives you a lot more nutrients that go along with that. One of the classes that we're going to do what I call fast food, and it's fish and seafood. It's one of the fastest things you could prepare. So if you don't have a lot of time, you can do that from start to finish, and probably even if you're going to be more speedy with your eating, you can have it done in 30 minutes from start to finish. And so to have some of those things ready at home or even in your freezer, you can defrost them really quickly. But we're going to look at ways to cook fish and seafood that's really fast. This whole curriculum is about helping you to use PANS instead of pills to improve your health. And I hope that that's a concept that you'll keep in your mind. Yes, pills can save your life, but it's not gonna make you healthy. They're not gonna make you healthy. So to think about how we can use PANS to address chronic disease instead of pills. And that's what Med Instead of Meds is all based on. A healthy eating pattern is essential for overall health, and there are other healthy eating patterns. This isn't the only one. It's one of the more popular ones, and it's been studied quite a bit. We'll talk a little bit about the DASH diet. How many of you have heard about DASH, dietary approaches to stop hypertension? Okay, and there's one that is gaining in popularity called the MIND diet. It's a combination of the med eating style and the DASH diet, but it's really focused on preventing cognitive decline and Alzheimer's. And I have a fact sheet in the back if you'd like to take that and learn more about, a little bit more about that. There's a lot of similarity between like the med way of eating and the MIND and the DASH diet. But with the MIND diet, it really promotes eating berries several times a week, particularly blueberries, and to get dark leafy greens every single day as a protective factor for your brain, as well as some other things. But those are kind of the more specific things about the MIND diet, which all of that fits well into the med style of eating. So our key components for the Medway. So eating lots and lots and lots and lots of fruits and vegetables. So that's incorporated all throughout the med eating style. It incorporates basics of eating that were traditionally practiced in countries that border the Mediterranean Sea. And so that's why we call it the Mediterranean style diet or eating pattern. I don't want to call it a diet, it's an eating pattern or an eating style. And so there's a lot of variety, a lot of flexibility within this eating pattern. And it's developed around how people historically ate in the Mediterranean region, not necessarily reflective of how they eat now. So it's reflective of how they used to eat historically. There's some other research that's very interesting to me. I don't know if it is to you or not, but it's called blue zones. Are any of you familiar with blue zones? I see some heads nodding. These are little pockets and communities around the world that the researcher Dan Buettner from National Geographic isolated as hotspots for aging, where people live longer but predominantly healthier lives. So they have the highest percentage of centenarians, and these are very vital and active centenarians, or people in their 90s that are still living very full lives. What's a common thread throughout, there are 9 components that they have in common, but one thing that stuck out to me is they still have more of an eating style that we would have had years ago. And when I say that, it's the absence of fast food. So like on the island of Ikaria, which is one that I visited, we had a study group go there. There are no fast food restaurants. And you drive up to a gas station and it's just gas pumps. There's no convenience store there. There are no sodas, no candy bars, no anything. So it's just a completely different environment. And it really shows how we have been strategic to give people cues to get different things and to eat in a less healthy way. And so I just find that all very interesting. Got kind of sidetracked there. Another one is to eat whole grains. That's very much a part of the Mediterranean eating style. In our eating dietary guidelines, we say make at least half of your grains whole. In the Mediterranean eating style, it's pretty much 100% whole grains. So we're going to explore some grains, and we're going to look at ways that you can maybe shift at least making more of your grains whole. You don't get all of them as whole grains, but we're gonna try some different ones. Beans and legumes are very, very much a part of the med eating style. And so they get a lot more plant-based protein than we do in America. And so we're gonna also look at ways to get more of those plant-based proteins. They eat fish and seafood. I think more often than this, but they say the recommendation is 2 to 3 times per week. But even more if you can. Eating nuts and seeds for snacks. Now, these are high in fat calories, but the fat is all a good fat. And to be mindful of smaller portions, but nuts and seeds used to kind of be one of the things we used to discourage people from eating. And now it's like, no, have them in small quantities as nuts and snacks, or add them to your salads or other kinds of foods that you prepare.
Unsalted.
Unsalted, thank you. Not salted, not honey roasted, not chocolate coated, but just plain nuts and seeds. Also, it's about replacing solid fats. Fats that are solid at room temperature are gonna be harder on your heart. That's just a basic way to remember it that we've talked about for years and years and years. And the med eating style really focuses on your oils, like olive and canola oils, sunflower oils, those kinds. We also use herbs and spices a lot to season instead of salt. And so we're gonna get a lot of herbs and flavorings for you to try. And I'll share some of my favorite things, but I also encourage you to bring some of your favorite things to share with the group. Maybe you've discovered a seasoning blend that's just really awesome that you'd like to try. So we'll be discovering some of those. And another that's common in the med eating style is drinking red wine in moderation. We're going to talk about that as we go, because I don't want to be responsible for telling you to drink wine. And there's research out there that is ongoing that the main recommendation is if you don't drink wine now, don't start thinking that you're going to get some magical benefit from it. I think the takeaway is, as part of the Mediterranean diet, in moderation, it's not going to harm you, but it doesn't have magical abilities to improve your health. So don't drink it thinking that you're gonna, you're doing something really good for yourself. And in moderation means one glass for women, I think it's 4 or 5 ounces, and then 2 for men per day. That's the recommendation for in moderation. And the Mediterranean way also recognizes the importance of physical activity. It emphasizes the importance of enjoying meals together. Geez, that's something in America we need to work on, because, and Antonina can probably speak to some of the differences in Ukraine. And I know when she and her children lived with me, it was just great. Mealtime was so much fun. And so it's to think about sharing those meals together. And in the Blue Zones research, they are that social component of sharing the meals together is a really important thing. And then also to limit the amount of sugar. So we're going to look at ways that you might get some of the sweet taste, but not all of the sugar. Because then in the Mediterranean eating style, their desserts are very minimal, and they're often fruits, or like today, we're going to sample what's called overnight oats. You can have that for breakfast, but it does seem kind of like it could be a dessert too, because it's chocolate. It has cocoa in it, or it could be a snack. So we're going to sample overnight oats as one of the things that could be possibly be a dessert. A little bit about, I'm gonna make sure I get my, don't go on too long here, so I want to have time for tasting. The Medway, we talk about superfoods. The Mediterranean style of eating incorporates almost every, what we would call superfood that's out there. And so it incorporates the fruits and vegetables, the nuts and seeds, and the beans and legumes, and the fish and seafood, and olive oil, and the plant-based oils. And it very much limits things like we just talked about: sugar, also red meat, processed meats. That's a really big thing, is to really cut back on the ultra processed foods in general. They just don't have them in other parts of the world. Zia will talk about that, and she says, "Oh, you can just buy it in the store and put it in the microwave." And I said, "Yes, you can, but you probably shouldn't." It makes the convenience. We probably top the charts in terms of convenience as far as our foods are eating goes. So we're going to look at highly processed foods, ultra processed foods. What are they? And it's not that all processed foods are bad, because you go into the grocery store and you find those bags of veggies that are packaged, and all you have to do is put them in the microwave. and cook them. Those are good that's processed food. Not ultra processed, but it is a form of processed food and it's a good choice. So not everything that gets that label processed food is bad or harmful. So we're gonna talk about that too. A lot of what we do today is the introduction, kind of things that are coming down the pipe in future classes. And the Mediterranean, this med instead of meds, eating the med way is not necessarily about a flavor profile. Now, there will be some Mediterranean flavors, but we'll introduce a lot of others too. It can be Mexican food flavors, it can be Italian, it can be even American, it can be all kinds of different food flavors. It can be Indian, it can be Greek, or just simply delicious. It may not have any kind of cultural connection. And so it's not about a flavor profile. Also, typical Italian or Greek dishes are not always consistent with eating the med way. So we have an example here. We have spaghetti with white flour and with a lot of red meat. We have shish kebabs that are just meat, high meat. We have white flour and cheese for the pizza. So we're gonna look at how can we do that? That's also part of the curriculum, is making some flips. One thing you could do with spaghetti, of course, you can always go with a whole grain or whole wheat pasta. But in that sauce, you can use the ground meat as just kind of a flavoring, but then add in some legumes, some lentils, and other veggies to give some texture to it. And you get some of that flavor of the meat, but you may not even know that it has all these other things in it as well. And so we're gonna experiment with that. Of course, the shish kebab, you can add veggies to those. You don't have as much meat. Add all kinds of veggies. And with the pizza, you can do a whole wheat crust. That's something that you're interested in sampling, like a pizza. I like to use white whole wheat flour. Has kind of a nutty taste to it. It's lighter. Not as heavy as regular whole wheat. We can always do a homemade pizza too, and then just, you have the control over how much cheese you put on when you make it at home. And this is not what we're talking about in terms of having foods that are healthier. So we have sweet potato, seasoned fries, it says olive oil, but we're gonna look at some of the ingredient labels. And if there's a long list of things that you can't pronounce or can't even read, that's gonna be an indication that there's a lot more in there than you were thinking it was. And then the same with the chips that they have. Of course, they're cooked in olive oil and have sea salt, but you really get to looking at that label, you'll discover some things there that kind of trick you with. And don't get hung up on magical ingredients. Because we promote olive oil, using it doesn't mean you have to have a lot of olive oil. That doesn't mean you put it on everything. It still has a lot of calories and you want to use it in somewhat of moderation. But we're using it in place of the solid fats. So the magic is all in the food, all in the natural ingredients. And these are a couple of examples of eating, more visual ways of eating recommendations about the med way of eating. And it shows you here, I don't believe I have this as a handout, but I can get that for you. These are different food pyramids, and you'll notice that things that eat more often are at the bottom of that pyramid, but both of them say, first of all, be physically active, enjoy meals with others, but then eat mostly whole grains, fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, legumes, drink plenty of water, eat more seafood, and then poultry, eggs, cheese, yogurt. At the very top, they have meats and sweets. So to eat, we're not saying protein, but red meat, to eat more in moderation. It's really hard for me. My brother raised his purebred Angus cattle. But he also, our family genetics is a cholesterol and triglyceride issue. He's a pretty healthy guy, and he had, that cholesterol thing kicked in and he wanted to make changes in his diet and not take any statins. And so he did that for a number of years. He controlled it. So the meat producer, the cattle producer would buy bison in the grocery store. He wouldn't even eat his own red meat. And he was very disciplined with it and got to the point where at 67, he couldn't, deal with diet alone anymore. So he finally started with some medications. But I always just use him as an example because it's really hard in the Midwest. We get those messages to eat a lot of meat, and it's not that you shouldn't eat it, but we just probably get too much. So smaller portions, using it as flavoring. So that's what we're going to explore. So not the big steak sitting on your plate, but you could have several slices of that steak in a stir fry, still get the flavor. It's that kind of a thing that we're going to experiment with. This is another good visual for healthy eating. This one's from Harvard, and it's a visual representation of the Medway of eating. So it's similar to the My Plate from the USDA. So you make 1/2 of your plate vegetables and fruits, and heavier on vegetables, and then on the other side you have whole grains and your protein, healthy protein. So it's very similar to the My Plate recommendation. We mentioned the DASH diet earlier. The DASH diet is more similar now. It was lower in fat than the Medway, but that we're realizing that it's not necessarily to have such a low fat diet as it is to choose the healthier fats. And so the new dietary guidelines, which are going to be getting revised here pretty soon, they're through 2025. But they've also incorporated some of that Mediterranean style eating and kind of moving more towards that Medway kind of approach. So why should you go med? We know it's evidence-based. It's been a way of eating for many, many years that's proven to be very delicious and also helpful in terms of your health. There's a lot of strong evidence around the Medway of eating, and so it's one that we routinely, the top two eating styles tend to be the Mediterranean style and the DASH diet, and have been for years, that come out as the most recommended. The Medway also decreases the risk from some forms of cancer. We know specifically colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer are associated lower rates with the Mediterranean diet. And that would be another reason. We know that the Medway is also better than a low-fat diet for weight loss. One of the things with low-fat diets, when you have some fat in your diet, more fat, it increases your satiety, your feeling of satisfaction. Food will stay with you longer. You're not going to get hungry as quickly. And so you end up eating a little bit less than you would otherwise because you feel satisfied. So that's part of the reason why it's associated with a more of a healthier weight and approach. We know that obesity is one of the leading public health crises of our time. It's connected to just about every type of chronic disease, increasing your risk for chronic disease. And it continues to be a challenge for many people that's struggling with weight, that are overweight or trying to maintain weight. And so the eating the Medway can help address this, because you feel satisfied, you can enjoy your food, you don't feel deprived, and you're more likely to stick with it. They found that 9 out of 10 people are still worried about consuming fat. It's gotten a bad rap. It's kind of been labeled as fat's the bad guy. You may remember, some of you may be old enough to know when we said don't eat eggs. That was, I see these things come and go a number of times now, and then it was just only eat the egg white. Well, now we've gotten to the point where you can eat the whole egg, and it's actually a really good choice, particularly for older people who may need a good quality protein that's easy to chew, easy to digest, easy to prepare, eggs are one of the best. And so we really don't, kind of gone from eggs being not so good to, hey, eat eggs. So I'm also gonna just preface this to say, recommendations are gonna continue to change. Nutrition's still a very new science, and we're gonna keep learning things as we go. So I think that's one reason the Mediterranean diet has been one that's been promoted for a long time because of its history with longevity and in the Mediterranean region. And so we kind of know that that particular eating style is a good one. We need to abandon this notion that low fat leads to less weight gain. So we need to just kind of rethink that. I think that we did a good job of pounding that into people's brains at one time. But fat can be part of your diet. It's just be mindful of the types of fats that you choose. We also know that eating the Medway promotes reduction in your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease and other kind of cognitive decline. That is a biggie. We're seeing more and more of that as people live longer. That's just the primary risk for cognitive decline in Alzheimer's is age. And as people live longer and longer, but who wants to live with that particular situation? And so the med style is really helpful to protect the brain. What protects your heart also protects your brain. That's a really good thing because we can get the same message for both. So it's really important to know that this is also effective for brain health. We also know that it can improve your eye health by reducing the risk of macular degeneration. And another good thing about the med diet, med style of eating. And we know it can decrease your risk of type 2 diabetes. It can also help you manage type 2 diabetes if you have it. And part of that is associated with body weight, but also just the more higher fiber in your diet helps you be able to control your blood sugar better. And so those things kind of go hand in hand. It's better actually than a low-fat diet for managing diabetes, is what we know. And eating the Medway can help manage and reduce your risk of high blood pressure. So I hope I've convinced you with a lot of this information of why it's really a good option. Reducing cardiovascular disease as much as 30 to 60%. Cardiovascular disease is still the leading cause of death in the United States and in Kansas. And it's being, the same as across the country. So it's still a huge issue and one that we have to be constantly working. A full adoption of a modern version of the Mediterranean eating pattern can be considered one of the most effective approaches for the prevention of fatal and non-fatal cardiovascular disease complications. So it is really a good choice for your heart. And they found that consuming 9 or more servings of fruits and veggies a day resulted in a 60% reduction in cardiovascular disease. These veggies, again, fruits and veggies have a lot of fiber. And they're going to help you feel full, and then they're packed with all kinds of nutrients. Just know that the way that they're prepared and the way you eat them can make a big difference. A baked potato and a French fry. It's still a potato, but there's a big difference between the two. So again, just to review, these are all parts of the Medway of eating. This is what we're going to be covering over the next 6 months, the next 5 sessions that we have. We'll be taking these and looking at 1 or 2 of the concepts, one of the steps each time that we meet. So what sets it apart from other eating patterns? Well, it's simple. And I think that's a key that as we were talking about some of the things that you've been mentioning, is to keep things simple. If you can just cook something and do a good job of preparing it, and it's done just right with some good seasoning, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be very delicious and it can be very satisfying. So these are the 7 steps that we're going to cover over the next after today, the next 5 times. We're gonna change your proteins, swap your fats, eat more vegetables, eat more fruits, snack on nuts and seeds, make your grains whole, and rethink your sweets. And so the tastings, even though these are gonna be the concepts, I think it's rather than the next time that we get together, rather than everything you taste be a protein swap, there's gonna be a mixture of things. So it's not just, it'll still be kind of balanced each time. So the tastings will reflect all of these steps each time that we're together, and not just be foods that support that one tip. So that way you'll kind of know in advance what we're gonna be doing. Well, and sometimes we'll combine those, swap your fats and snacks and on nuts and seeds are combined together and so on. Can you pull that? No, it still needs to keep cooking. Is my assistant. Yeah, just pull the foil off the top. I hope it's done. I got it in there a little later than I wanted to. What we're gonna be talking about too are what we call med flips. So it's a way to transform a popular food to a medway version of it. And so that's gonna be part of our focus. And we're gonna look at practical advice for eating the medway, living the medway every day. And we're gonna have these quick life hacks. So it's gonna be how to do something like you were talking about that's fast for your to be able to make a switch. That'll help you make each of those 7 steps. It's just gonna help you put those steps into practice. And another focus is on mindful eating, to where you're not just eating to be eating. My dad was a dairy farmer and a grain farmer, and he was on overdrive all the time. He would come in talking about everything that needs to be done, who's gonna do it, and throughout eating his meal, and he's just shoveling it in. And he had a really hard time to ever just kind of go back to a, kind of downshift and allow himself to actually taste his food. He just kind of inhaled it. And so that, I just saw that over and over, and he got to be a pretty large fella because he ate a lot of food. He didn't give his brain time to signal his stomach, you're full. He just kept putting it in, and then you go off again. Of course, he worked really hard, he burned a lot of it off, but not mindful at all in how he ate. So we're gonna try to look at ways to be more mindful. And I've got an activity, I don't know if we'll have time for it today, but kind of focuses on mindful eating. I'm gonna direct you to the medinsteadofmeds.com website. That's where you'll find a lot of information, a lot of recipes. Again, a lot of these we're gonna be trying, and then some others as well. And this is the time for tasting. Now, I don't have one of these. We are gonna do the curry quinoa salad today. And I have some different ones for you. When you get the. And so we're going to look at each one of those recipes, and then we'll have you come out here, some tasting. So when we look at this curry quinoa salad, some of you may or may not like the curry seasoning. It has quinoa. How many of you have tried quinoa? Most people have. This is a tricolor quinoa. Thought that was a little more exciting than just light colored quinoa. So it's a tricolor. Quinoa is an ancient grain. It's actually a seed. It's one that they promote as possibly a way to feed the world because it's easily produced and very easy to store and extremely helpful. And easy to prepare. So we're gonna try this curry quinoa salad. It has quinoa, it has mango. I'm gonna show you how to chop a mango here in just a second. It has some black beans. And so whenever you use the canned beans, make sure you rinse them well, drain and rinse them. Has some green onions and then sliced almonds that are toasted. Don't forget that toasted step. That's what makes them tasty. So later on in the classes, I'm going to introduce you to something I introduced it to Antonina and her family to is orzo pasta. And when you do orzo, you toast it first and it tastes so much better. You toast it in the pan and then cook it. Lots of things you can do with orzo, and I do have a whole wheat version we're gonna try. Whole wheat orzo and see what we can, different ways to use it, but don't forget that tasting step. And it says to add the vinaigrette just before you serve it. So I've got that pulled together. I'm going to wash my hands. I'll show you real quick how to slice a mango and then we'll add the dressing. Those of you that are on Zoom, you'll find most of these recipes in the medinsteadofmeds.com. So if you just go to the website, do a search for curry quinoa salad, that's the first one that we'll be tasting. And so when you do the mango, an easy way to cut it, you know, it has that big seed in the center. So you slice 2 like chunks off of each side of that seed. And then take your knife and just score. Don't cut through the skin on the outside, just score it. And then flip it, score it so that you'll get little cubes. And then take your mango and flip it around. See all these nice little pieces of mango here, and then you can just go on and slice them. So there we are. So now I have, I didn't add the almonds, like, because I wanted them to stay crunchy. So we'll add those in. Here's our dressing. And I have most of the mango in already, so there's more mango in there than what I just put in.
This dress,
What's that?
what is this dress?
It has curry, it has, I think, some Greek yogurt.
Yogurt, lemon juice, olive oil.
There we go. And Jen, you want to get the other bowl out, the other salad? One thing that you can do with, particularly if you're just cooking for 1 or 2, is to use, and canned beans are always very handy, but you can cook your own dried beans and then just freeze them in smaller quantities. Beans freeze really well, so does rice. And so brown rice, it takes longer to cook. So you can put brown rice in little bags in serving sizes. Have them in your freezer. Okay, this next one is the summer green bean salad. And it has a lot of fresh basil, which I love, and I have lots of basil growing, so that was easy to calls for a lot of basil. So it has green beans, fresh corn, and tomatoes, and then the dressing. And it says for the basil to do a chiffonade cut. which is just cutting it into long little strips. So the easiest way to do that is to just take your basil leaves, stack them. You can fold them in half. I like to just roll them up. Then take your knife and just cut those little strips. You have these long little basil strips that you can put in. So that's an easy thing to do. So I believe all we need to do for this one, it should be ready to go. It's got the dressing already in there. That's just a sherry vinegar. You could use like a wine vinegar or whatever you have. This is a sherry vinegar, Dijon mustard and olive oil. And so we're gonna mix this up. It's got the basil on the top. And it's really great this time of year because it uses that fresh corn. I froze a lot of fresh corn, just pulled it out and used it for the salad. So this has been frozen, but it is fresh corn. And then the last one is, Nina.
Yeah.
The last one is called chocolate, not the last, we've got the beans, chickpeas coming too, but chocolate overnight oats. Now, this is a really easy thing to prepare. It can either be used for breakfast as oats. You can use it as a snack, or it can also be a dessert, because it kind of looks more like a dessert. It's got, kind of looks like chocolate pudding, and it has a little bit of few strawberries on the top and a couple of chocolate chips to add into the presentation. So it's overnight oats that we'll be sampling. And then the last one is the chickpeas. Yes.
Friend, how are you doing? Okay. Hard. Watching time ago, let's do no payment. Sort of there. Yeah. Yeah, I got out of that's for the fast. Oh, yeah. You down there or something? It's like. It's expensive. I'm there.
Okay, this last dish is, these are chickpeas. Yeah. You'll need to kind of work around the bay leaves and the thyme and the rosemary in there. But this is a dish that is very common in Ikaria. And they would present, the cook would present a big, her version of a chickpea dish that was cooked with all the veggies and stuff, much like we present our Thanksgiving turkey. Now, I'm not sure I really want to try that. If someone thinks they're getting turkey and you bring them a dish of chickpeas, but it's just, it also, I think you can think about it as a way to try something different. The chickpeas could be the entree, and then you could work around that, and maybe not for Thanksgiving dinner, but for some other time. But these chickpeas, I use canned chickpeas. I like to use the dry, but to save time, I use canned. And it would normally be, I got online and saw the conversion, how many cans for this amount of chickpeas. it needs more chickpeas than this, so I would up that in your recipe to probably 3 cans instead of 2 for this recipe, but you could also cut this down into a much smaller quantity as well. But it has, the chickpeas and also different veggies, seasonings, and again, we'll just work around the bay leaves and the rosemary. So come on up and go ahead and grab a plate and do some tasting. Again, there's flavored water up here, very flavored water, so help yourself.
You guys were sitting in the back. I didn't know you were sitting in the back.
These are not.
It's just that.
Oh, no. It's just the salt.
I tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
They eat real food because I won't put them, that's what they ate on my plate. You still like occasional chicken strips and mashed potatoes.
Normal, was there?
Just to work it, but-
Okay.
I'll make a curry dish, I might not eat the dish as it is, I'll eat the vegetables and.
I'd like to do that instead of using candy.
Oh, yeah, right.
But it's just.
There's that. It's like.
Yeah, money. Well, it's just getting excited and then we're gonna have.
Oh my gosh, my neck bias. Yes. It's so simple. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I like it when you're on double. I don't wanna food change anybody, but.
Yeah. Trying to, yeah.
Your plans for 20 and there are, you don't have that much, you are welcome, back to second. Right.
So is this like make it and you don't need it that day of the fruit?
It's the moisture from the yogurt that's going to soften the oat.
Yeah,
so
that's what some of
The longer it sits, the more softer it's gonna be. So if you do it overnight, it's gonna be a little bit firmer, but then if you wait 2 days, then it's gonna be more softer,
And
baby
you can
food consistency.
easily make that in much smaller quantities.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was like,
Just enough, like they recommend just whatever you want for the next day.
Sure, and that's what I was.
Yeah, breakfast or.
so maybe like half, is that all that was?
That is actually for the rest of them.
Like,
Right, the recipe, no, it's three of them, I think. They say that.
Oh, that's
one serving, but it's.
Boy, that is rock. Sarah's world. We should find one, not gonna see my. If it was just one person.
It's really simple, so you can even do it in the morning and then have it served
At night.
yeah, just do it in the morning, yeah.
Okay, so Funny piece of pepper.
You see, I just realized that my diet does, I pantry.
That's good news, I didn't think told you.
If it's in there.
Yeah.
It's just veggies.
That's a whole bit of this.
Fish and, right?
We should dig it up to
I
you.
love veggies, no fat.
Doesn't fun. Yeah. I don't know what else you like to do.
Trying to wrap up. So does anybody have questions, any thoughts or perceptions about the taste of the food? I always tell people when you try some of these foods that are maybe not, to try to put away your expectation of what you're comparing it to, what you know. Rather than comparing like the overnight oats, you're gonna serve that as a dessert, rather than comparing that to chocolate pudding, which it's not gonna be the same. Say, ask yourself, but does it taste good? Could I eat this again? And not that it's going to be just like something you're trying to replace, but rather, you know, can I incorporate this? And then you start to, over time, kind of change your norm by your expectation. So the more you eat healthy, the more that becomes your norm. And that's what you sort of compare to. They're all quiet. Good, it's fine. So next week or next month, our topic is change your protein. So that's what the content will be on. Then we'll sample and support this.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Sherilyn, for this wonderful educational nutrition administration. I mean, you did a fabulous job, and would everyone agree? And for those who are with us via Zoom, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to this wonderful session today, and we have 5 more to go. And I want to thank the College of Health and Human Sciences for allowing us to utilize this beautiful space. And for those who are with us virtually, if you get the opportunity to join in on this class in person, you will be so impressed with this beautiful space. So Dr. Lynn Shield and Karen, thank you so much for all that you do to make this happen. And I hope that you all enjoy this wonderful meal and have a wonderful night. Thank you.